Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming to Free Your Fines, and the rest will follow. I'm Genesis Hansen from the Mission Viejo Library. We have Misty Jones from San Diego and Derek Wolfgram from Redwood City. And this morning, we'll be going through our three presentations. Misty's going to be talking about San Diego's proposal for eliminating overdue fines. Derek's going to give you a case study for the impacts of eliminating youth overdue fines. And I'm going to give you a little workaround if you are not able or not ready to completely eliminate fines. We're going to have plenty of time for questions at the end. So hold your questions till the end, and we will try and get to all of them. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Misty.
Good morning. I have a little bit of housekeeping. There's a evaluation form going around, so please, if you get that, make sure that you fill it out and leave it at the end of the session, because they said that I had to make you do that. So, eliminating fines. So this is the San Diego Library story, and we are at the very beginning of this proposal. We put together a proposal, or presenting it to our city council and our city exec team in order to eliminate all overdue fines next fiscal year. Fingers crossed. So some of the reasons that we decided to go this route. The analysis of this was that we have what's called a council policy, because we're city council run, and our council policy says that our fines are supposedly a category 3 fine, which means that it is only for a deterrent, right? It's a deterrent to keeping your books out, and we are tasked with doing an analysis every year to determine if that is truly the case and if it is cost effective to collect these fines every year. I can say that that has never probably been done. This yearly analysis has never been done. So I decided that this year we were going to do that, because we have had some significant staffing cuts. All of you in California are probably aware of the pension issue and the rise in pension costs, which have kind of created havoc on a lot of budgets. And so we have been tasked with some budget cuts which have necessitated cutting some staff. And so we're really looking at what we can do to save staff time. So we looked at what type of fine this was, and was it truly a deterrent? And I just want to use a quote. If you don't know, Columbus Metropolitan Library eliminated their overdue fines last January. And their director, I spoke to him, and he said, we've had 150 years to charge fines, and they've never been a deterrent. People still, if it was working, people would never turn their stuff in late, right? So 150 years of history of charging fines, and I think that proves that it's not a deterrent. So we did the policy interpretation. The effectiveness of fines, again, not a deterrent. In fact, it becomes a barrier to most people, and I'll discuss that a little bit later. It's a negative image. What's the first thing that people, when you say I work for the library, what's the first thing they say? Oh my God, I have a fine, right? You have this perception that people can't come to the library because they have a fine, that they're not even allowed in the doors. Like when they walk through, this large buzzer is going to go off that says you owe 15 cents. So they just stop coming. And you have a whole group that get to the blocked, depending on what your threshold is. And instead of paying their fines, they just stop coming to the library. So we lose them totally. We don't just lose them, but we lose their families, and we lose their kids, and then their kids never come to the library. So we're losing this whole segment of our population because we charge 15 cents a day for you not, shame, bringing your book back on time. And then just the service to our patrons. What's the ultimate goal of libraries? For people to use us, is access, right? For people to come through the doors. And that's what we want. So creating any type of barrier for that is not serving our patrons well, in my humble opinion. So we did a lot of study for this. And if you're going to do a proposal for the city of San Diego, you better have your stuff together. And I did not curse. You better have your stuff together. You have to know exactly, you have to have the facts, you need to have the numbers, and you need to prove your case, right? So we did the socioeconomic impact of this. And I know it's hard to see, but if you look, and if you're not familiar with San Diego, I'll kind of explain this. So, I have a little pointer. So these areas here, and this is by fine. So this is unpaid overdue fines by zip code. This area here, guess what? The lowest socioeconomic areas in the city have the highest rate of unpaid fines. And why is that? Because they can't pay them. And I think that's when you talk about fines, and what a lot of people don't even think about is that $3 to a lot of families is a huge deal. When you make $200 a week, to pay a $10 fine is the difference between eating dinner and not eating dinner. So we really looked at this and said, holy crap. We're creating this barrier for the people who need us the most. Again, if you look, and this is the percentage of blocked and barred patrons, and San Diego blocks you if you owe $10. So if you have a $10 fine, you have to pay it below $10 in order to be able to use the services. And then a barred patron, we have a policy that when you get to $49.99, if you go beyond that point, you are sent to city treasurer's collection. And that is that's per city charter, right? We have a collections. And in San Diego, per the city charter, it is illegal. We cannot waive a fine. We cannot forgive a fine. It is a debt owed to the city. And we cannot forgive that. So that puts a very big restriction on what we're able to do, right? And we have a lot of kids that have a large amount of fines that their parents have rung up, collected on their card. Their parents have not been the most responsible. They have large amount of fines, and then they're not allowed to use the library anymore because they have a fine, right? I have one girl, and what started this whole thing for me was I had, in one of our lowest socioeconomic areas, I have a young lady who's in foster care. She's been in foster care for 5 years. She has a fine on her card of $400 that her mother checked out a bunch of items, her biological mother checked out a bunch of items and never returned them. She hasn't been in the custody of her biological mother for 5 years, but she cannot get a card and she cannot check out materials. So I would say unfair, absolutely. So if you look here, I almost pointed out the window. If you look here, these branches that have the largest amount of blocked and barred patrons, lowest socioeconomic areas. So we have these people that need us the most that cannot check anything out, that don't have access to us any longer. Our financial impact, and when you can talk all day about barriers to service and, what is our vision? Our vision is to connect people. We want people to read. We want them to use the library, and then we're charging them money and they can't use the library anymore. So kind of the opposite of what we stand for. And you could talk all day about that, but when it comes down to proving it to your finance department, it becomes about the money, right? And I just had a big discussion a couple of weeks ago because they see this, when I put together the proposal, as a revenue source. Fines are not a revenue source. They should never be counted as a revenue source. Should never be considered a revenue source. So I had to have a big argument with them about it's not revenue. So if you look at the financial impact, and I was trying to see this. So what we did is the cost of the fees and supplies that we do. So we have to have armored car come and pick up. We have to do deposits every single day. So if you collect 15 cents or you collect $150, we have to do a deposit every single day, staff time. So you have to count the money in the morning, you have to count the money at night, and then you have to do the deposit every day. Then our delivery has to bring it to the central library where they put it all together, and an armored car has to come and pick it up every single day. We have to have different bags for copier money and fine money. We have to have all of the slips that go with it. You have to have coin counters. You have to have all of these supplies, right? And then we did the personnel expense. So what we did was the average, and we average daily registered transactions, and so that's in-person fines. We don't have fine payment on our self-checks yet. We're working on that. My IT person is in the front, so I keep reminding him that we are working on that. And it's a priority, Curtis. So we don't have he's like, way to call me out, thanks. We don't have that yet, but we're working on it because we're trying to get to be a cashless library system. But you have to pay your fines in person. And so we took an average of how many transactions that we do yearly and estimated 1 minute per transaction, which we know is not accurate, right? I mean, you could spend 10 minutes with somebody who has a 15-cent fine. But we said 1 minute per transaction. And what we came to, just to give you the numbers, is we take in about $650,000 a year in fines. It costs us $1.2 million to collect them. So that right there, and that staffing, that's conservative. That's a conservative estimate. And so when you talk about streamlining services and what you want to do, I mean, it's all about the numbers. What is your return on investment? And for my advice is, if you're looking at this, is to look at the barriers, look at how it's affecting your community, look at what areas have the highest number of fines, and are you creating barriers? And then really look at, what is it costing you to do this, and how much do you bring in? Because that becomes a really good argument to a finance department to say, we are not breaking even on this. We are losing money on this. So again, cost versus the revenue, I say. So that's a pretty dramatic story. And that's my story.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Derek Wolfgram. I'm the director of the Redwood City Public Library, which is part of the Peninsula Library System. Just really quickly, for folks who might not be familiar with that, Peninsula Library System is a collaborative of the 7 city libraries and the county library in San Mateo County. So we all have a shared database. We all share our materials. Our delivery goes through the entire system. And so when we go to make a policy decision about something like fines, we have 7 city councils and 1 JPA board that are all part of weighing in on that decision, as well as all of the library advisory boards and all of the other folks associated with that. But we were able to successfully, last year we eliminated all fines on juvenile and teen materials. And I'm here to just share a few of the results of that, kind of the back end of what will hopefully happen in San Diego that Misty and her staff will get to experience. And I'm not going to talk about, but can answer some questions about some of the logistics of decisions after we're done. You know, there are questions that you don't think of when you first go down this road, like, are we going to base it on card type, or are we going to base it on material type? And what are the financial impacts of doing it each way, and what are the service impacts of doing it each way? So it's definitely more complex than just saying, hey, we're going to stop bringing in some money. So I wanted to share some of the results that we got from doing that, since we have a year under our belts. This is a little small, but to give you the overall idea, on circulation, the blue bar is our adult circulation, and the orange bar is our youth circulation. In the year before and the year after, we eliminated children's fines. So you can see that youth circulation went from being 19% of our total circ to 26% of our total circ. That number is actually a little bit low from the public library side because our system also includes 3 community colleges, so they don't do a lot with youth materials. So actually our youth circ as in the public libraries is higher than 26%. But these are system-wide numbers, and so the bar at the top, in that year, adult circulation dropped by 14%, youth circ went up by 33%. I think that speaks volumes right there. Getting rid of fines isn't the only thing that we've done. You know, we've been making a lot of efforts as a system to reach out to youth with the Student Success Card and working with a local community collaborative called The Big Lift. There's a lot of effort that's going into increasing children's and teens' use of the library, but I have to think that fines played a big role in this shift. Same thing looking at new card registrations the year before and the year after we implemented this policy. We had, in the year before, just under 10,000 youth registrations, and in the year after we made the change, we had almost 16,000 youth registrations. And same thing, the adult registrations grew a little bit, 8% year over year. Youth new card registrations went up 61%. So again, just that removing that barrier, and I think the fact that we really heavily promoted it and advertised it and tried to get the word out and let people know that everybody that we had contact information for sent information like, hey, your card's unblocked now. And I'll show a little bit of those statistics in a little bit. This is the cards that are blocked. Children's and adult, you can see that children's and teens is actually a relatively small percent of our blocked cards, but it went down significantly. We went from 13,500 down to about 8,000 blocked cards, so we got about 5,500 kids who were able to use their cards again. Those 8,000 are cards that had lost or damaged materials because we did strictly get rid of daily overdue fines. We didn't get rid of charges for lost or damaged materials, and so we do still have some work to do in that regard, but I think it's anything you can do that has 5,500 kids and teens more able to use the library is something to be really proud of. And then the last thing I wanted to share is Misty was talking about counting on fines as a revenue source. Even if we don't get rid of fines, we're getting rid of fines. This is the total fines we've collected over the last few years. Whether we like it or not, that revenue isn't coming in, and part of that is probably due to the fact that circulation has been declining a little bit, and so fines are going down along with that. Part of it may be that we're having more people that are unable to pay when they do owe us money, so the uncollected fines go up a little bit. But you know, getting rid of youth fines just kind of continued the trend on down. The blue has been our youth fines, and the adult is our I'm sorry, the orange are the adult fines. So you can see that over time, even the adult fines are shrinking, whether we choose to get rid of them or not. We're actually pretty excited that we made this decision before fiscal year 15-16 was over, so we didn't know exactly how much we were going to be giving up in fines. We had based our assumptions on the previous year's numbers, and we ended up going from 94,000 down to 72,000 over the course of that year. So we can really say it was only $72,000 in revenue that we gave up in order to get a 33% increase in youth circulation, a 61% increase in new card registrations, and 5,500 kids and teens able to use the library that weren't able to before. So that's a little bit about our story, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after Genesis tells you about what she's got going on in Mission Viejo. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm not going to reiterate too much of what Derek and Misty already talked about. We had some of the same considerations that we were looking at in terms of the people who were really being blocked and prevented from using the library by fines were the people who most needed to use the library, and that was a big factor for us. But we had some other considerations in the mix, and we knew we weren't going to be able to completely eliminate fines or even a portion of fines for a while, because the city was going through a cost allocation study and then a fee study, and that process was going to take a couple of years, and and we really wanted to make a difference as soon as we could. So we started thinking about some options. And we were looking at other issues that we had as well. Even with ongoing weedings, our shelves are packed. Our collection is built out, we're full, and we're constantly having to juggle and figure out how do we get our books back on the shelves and get more stuff checked out. We had about an average of 17% of our collection checked out at any one time. That would go up during summer reading to about 25% of the collection, but that was pretty much peak. So we had room for additional checkouts to come in. We really wanted to increase the use of the library. And our circulation had been gradually declining since the peak and peak of the recession. Everybody, recession hits, they start using the library more and more. We all saw our stats go up. So we never dropped down below pre-recession levels, but there was just a gradual decline going on. And in our library, we really wanted to prioritize use. Misty talked about this, and the library is for use. The collection is for use. And we have been looking at our policies and our procedures that prevent people from using the library. The other thing we've been looking at a lot are policies that favor theoretical patrons over real patrons.
Yes.
So, for example, here's one that was in place that we have gotten rid of, and I hope that you will too, which is the policy, someone hits their limit of number of renewals, and you would make them bring the book back so it could sit on the shelf for 24 hours, and then they can check it out again, rather than just extending their renewal. Because somebody might want that item, right? Well, somebody does want that item. It's the person standing in front of you asking you if they can renew it. So those are some of the things that were kind of in our background. And so our solution was auto renewal and increasing the number of renewals allowed. So we decided, okay, if we can't eliminate fines, let's see what we can do to keep them from happening in the first place. So we worked with our ILS to implement an auto renewal process, which means items that come due, if there's no hold, system just automatically renews it.
Yeah.
We increased the number of renewals allowed up to 10. And there was a lot of debate about that in our library. I'll get to that a little bit later, where the limit should be and how many. But I actually wanted to eliminate it completely, the limit. And some of my staff talked me back from that. But I said, I want a big limit so that we can get a lot of data about how this change really affects people. And we're going to do a long pilot project. And then we decided, okay, we're going to do that. And then we're going to pilot, we'll evaluate, we'll adjust as needed. And that's a key. You want to be able to say, nothing is set in stone, we're going to try this, and we're going to adjust to make it work as best we possibly can. So there were some concerns raised. These are a distillation of some lengthy conversations, so it's a little bit flippant, but the gist is up here. I do want to give credit to my staff, because the Mission Viejo Library staff are awesome. They've rolled with a lot of changes, and they have a great attitude towards it. But they were bringing up things that they thought patrons would be worried about, different concerns that came up. A big one, there will be nothing left on the shelves, and that's where we wrote, we've only got 17% of our collection checked out, and we are stuffed to the gills. There is plenty of room for more stuff to go out. There's nothing going to be left for the people who like to browse. If that's true, we are buying the wrong stuff. I'm serious about that. If 25% of our collection goes out and there's nothing left for the people who are coming in to look, we're spending our money on the wrong things. So some people don't like to place holds. They just want to come in and look for that item that they're looking for. That's their choice. That is completely their choice. And now they still have that choice. We have a mechanism in place, which is the holds list, for them to put their name on a list and get that specific item that they want. If they choose not to use it, that's okay. We're not going to force them to. That's fine. But there's a little bit of education involved. Hey, that item may not come back as quickly as it used to, because there's this auto renewal process. So if you really want it, put a hold on it. But overall, we're not going to be worrying too much about, what people might want or might think about that. And then items will never come back if we let people keep them too long. Honestly, most of our users, they want to be able to come back and check out more stuff, so they're bringing their stuff back. And I'll get a little bit to the results in a minute. So how we did it, we looked at what our exceptions needed to be. So for example, we have a rental DVD collection. We don't charge people money without their permission, so we don't auto-renew anything that has a fee associated with it. We're working on eliminating that fee, by the way. We worked with our ILS support team to create a custom report to run the function. So we're on Cersei Dynamic Symphony. We had hours in our service contract for custom reporting, and so it didn't actually cost us anything to do that. But we have paid for other custom reports. It's not been very expensive. It's worth looking into if it's something that you're interested in doing. And then we made some adjustments to our notifications and the renewal schedule. And this was kind of the big logistical issue that we had to deal with. We send out a courtesy notice 2 days before items come due to let people know, hey, item's coming up, With auto renewal, because, it's gonna keep renewing, we still wanted to be able to send out the courtesy notice. But if it's, we wanted to give them warning, which meant at the time, our ILS didn't have the ability to renew from the original due date. You could only renew it from the day you were performing the renewal. So that meant we were renewing things 2 days before the actual due date. So what we did was we wanted to do that so we could still send out the notices. So we did that. And then we had to adjust our notices, so it's like, this item has been renewed, this item has been renewed, this item could not be renewed. You still need to bring that one back. And so, there's been a lot, and that's actually one of the things we're still tweaking a little bit to make everything clear and visual. There are some limitations, but overall, that's what's worked. Now there's been an update to our system, so you can actually renew from the original checkout date, but that was a big logistical hurdle we had to jump over. The response has been really positive. I started with the city manager before we implemented, just saying, okay, we have this great service we want to do. It might end up dropping our fines significantly. And he said, well, how much? And I said, maybe 50%. And he said, well, actually, I can really sell that to council because it's all about a convenience service and something that you're doing to save our taxpayers money, and I think that they'll go for that. So great. So I had his buy-in. Once we implemented it, the patrons loved it with a very few exceptions. And here's the exception. You will have a small group of power users who come to the library on a specific day, every week, and they are very hands-on with their account management, and they did not want to give up control. So we created an opt-out category for those patrons so that they could opt out of auto-renewal. I will tell you that we have 165,000 card users and 33 people have opted out.
Please let me pay a fine.
Yeah.
And most of them were interested in it because of that. They're losing that 2 days on 1 week checkout items. They didn't want to read anyway. So staff adapted really quickly. Most of the fears that we talked about did not materialize. But it reduces the number of conversations that you have to have with patrons who are angry about fines, which is great, and staff really likes that. And they get to be the good guys. I observed so many conversations, walking by the checkout desk where people will say, oh, how many times can I renew? And they would say, oh, you can renew it 10 times. 10 times, wow. And they think it's so great, and our staff get to be the bearers of good news for once, which is really, really nice, and they really like that. So that's been really positive. We saw a 43% increase in circulation, which is fantastic. So we saw some increase in just overall circulation. The bulk of it is from renewals. That's continuing to rise. So as of first quarter this year, it's going. Percentage of the collection checked out is now fluctuating between about 20 and 25%. It took the majority of the year to reach that first 10 renewal limit. If you got a 3-week checkout period, you're talking about 33 weeks. So this coming year, we're still kind of considering part of our pilot as we're going to get more data about how that affects various rates and things, but this is kind of our preliminary stuff. We did see a 50% decrease in fines and a 30% drop in accounts sent to collections. So that it's really working to achieve a lot of the things that we wanted to achieve. It's not 100% there, but it's a really good start. We really want to get fines down to where it makes it very easy to eliminate them because, again, nobody's seeing it as a source of revenue. And, you know, if we can do that through improved service models and have those fines drop naturally, it's a great way to do it, and it helps us get some extra buy-in. So that's it. And now we have time for questions.
Do you want to be our question moderator?
Sure, I'll be the question moderator. Okay. Go ahead. Someone? Oh, no? Questions? Okay. Here? Yes.
Did you guys, any of you who implemented this already, do data that compared your outstanding debt for that same time period, and once you collect again to see if you were actually collecting a bigger percentage than you normally did? Because I read about a library in Colorado that they actually found that people were paying fines more often than they had done before they did the change.
Yeah. So far, we're still doing some data gathering. We have not found a significant, okay, sorry, I need to repeat the question. Did any of us who have implemented this find that there was also an increase in the number of outstanding debts that were collected once we implemented this process? I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. We did not see a significant difference in that, but again, we're still in the fairly early stages. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say ours was generally pretty break even. It was similar the year after we implemented that than it was to the year before in terms of uncollected.
Yes.
Does the Mission Viejo Library have hold fees for either charge for place or charge for not?
Okay, does Mission Viejo Library have hold fees for either charging to place a hold or charging for not picking up? No, we do not. Yes.
So San Diego County, you talked about the socioeconomic impacts. If you move to a cash-free climate, how do you anticipate addressing those who don't have credit cards?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is just staff.
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is, I keep forgetting to repeat the question. So he asked for, and it's San Diego Public, not San Diego.
Important distinction.
So if we are considering moving to a cashless, how would that affect people in a lower socioeconomic that don't have credit cards? What we are looking at is not having staff handle cash. So we're looking at, and there's several different vendors that have kiosk options where you can put the coins in and pay at a kiosk rather than having a person-to-person cash transaction. And then that kiosk basically does the accounting for you. So it prints out a sheet that tells you what your deposit is going to be. It will actually have the deposit slip, printed for you so that you don't have to count it and all of that. So that's what we're looking at. Of course, I was like, just make them go to the 7-Eleven and buy a credit. So, but it's, so we're looking at several different options.
Other questions? Yes.
Did anyone have a chance to look at whether or not there was an increase and decrease in items that did not come back to the library at all?
Okay, did we have a chance to look at whether there was an increase or decrease in items that did not come back to the library at all? We don't have a full year of data because we haven't gotten to a full year of that 10-time checkout. It has gone up very slightly, but not very much. I did a comparison, and most of the people are bringing their items back before they hit that 10-item limit so far. So at various points, we've done a sort of point-in-time count, and really only about 1% of the items checked out have been renewed 10 times. So it's not a huge proportion of our checkouts. Most people are bringing them back earlier. And honestly, that's one of the reasons we want to get a lot of data. It's like, what's the right limit if we have a limit? What accommodates most people. But honestly, 10 seems to be working out pretty well so far.
So, when you did the youth, taking away youth fines, did you do it by patron type or did you do it by item type?
So the question is, when we eliminated youth fines, was it by item type or by customer type? We did it by customer type for a couple different reasons. We thought that we wanted to be able to market this as something that was for kids and for teens. We have some alternatives for adults who check out a lot of children's materials, like teacher cards that have some different limits. So there were two reasons for doing it with the card type. One was that marketing aspect, and then actually as we ran the numbers, that was actually going to be about half the revenue loss that doing it by item type was going to be. And that was persuasive to a couple of our jurisdictions where the city administrations are very like, but we can't give up $5,000 in revenue just so our kids use the library again. It's a couple of our cities are very, very revenue driven, and so that was tough. And we looked around. There's a number of libraries in the Bay Area who have done this years ago, and it was pretty well split. I think there were a couple major libraries that did it by card type. The majority did do it by item type, but for those reasons that we talked about, we also didn't want, we didn't want children to be owing money if they checked out books from the adult section for a school project or something. We thought that was kind of an unreasonable burden to put on them to keep track of which things they were. So that's why we chose to do it by card type.
Question in the back?
Yeah. So the question is, since we did it by card type, did that create opportunities for adults to then use their children's cards to check out their own materials and avoid paying fines? And the answer is yes, it did, and we're okay with that.
Yes, in the back.
What ILS do you use, and were there any issues with implementing those changes with your ILS?
We use Cersei Dynex Symphony, and no, they were very helpful in setting that up. Like I said, there was that weird, we couldn't check out from the original due date, and so we had to find a workaround for that. That problem has been fixed, and they really worked with us to adjust our notifications and that kind of thing. So, it went pretty smoothly overall for us.
We have Symphony as well. I just want to add, we are actually implementing automatic renewal next week. And if you work for San Diego Public, surprise. So
I got to tweet that out. Breaking news.
So, but that's one of the things that we're trying to do as well, is along with this proposal, is to go ahead and start lessening the amount of fines that we're bringing in, so that it's kind of proving that point that it shouldn't be a revenue source. Right.
Yeah, and for people who can't guess, the question was about ILS type and whether
Yes,
there were
sorry,
any
yes.
issues with that. We use III Sierra, and the only thing that we had was we had some initial questions about whether some jurisdictions could opt out if there was a way to do the programming that we could do it city by city instead of doing it system wide. And gosh darn it, there was no way to do that, so everybody had to play.
Yeah.
As a librarian who tends to buy my own books because I can't manage my own renewals, I love the idea of auto renewal paired with buying free because of the increase in search.
Yeah.
And I think the questions you asked, that your staff are asking, are the right questions, and I'm glad to see the responses coming in. I had a follow-up question about some people don't like to place holes, and that being their choice. I'm wondering if you've done any work to examine how people are placing holes across different segments of the community. Because I think
That's a good question.
it's true that it's a choice for a large segment of the population, but it's not always a choice. And I'm a children's librarian, so I'm particularly thinking about kids who don't have a phone or regular access to a computer.
Yeah.
I think it also cuts across economic.
Yeah, so the question was about how did we give any thought to, we have we said people have the choice to place a hold if they really want to bring something back, but there are barriers for some patrons for doing that, whether they don't have computer access or abilities or different things like that. For us, a lot of it was with some of our senior population who are not as computer savvy. We have a high customer service standard, and we do a lot of patron assistance. And so we help people place holds if they cannot place holds. You know, it's not a perfect system, but you know, it's not about like staff are never going to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you place a hold. You have to do that. You know, absolutely, we help them do that, and that, you know, that's something that we try to do.
I'd be really interested as you guys report out your findings to hear how what populations you found you needed to address that with. Because I think
Yeah.
that would be helpful to people to approach that question.
Yeah. The question that came up from staff primarily was governed by the people who are regular patrons inside the library who are they just like to browse. They want to come in, they might be looking for a specific book, and they'll say, hey, is it checked in? Oh, no, it's not. Okay, I'll check back again next time. And that was kind of the anecdotal patron that they were thinking a lot about. But it is, you know, we are trying to look at all of the data and kind of figure out a good cross-section. And one of the things that we found when we did this, our preliminary analysis at the end of the year is like, well, we still need a lot more data. You know, it's like we need another several months to a year to really get a complete picture of how things are operating. But so far, it's a net positive in a pretty big way. So, sorry, lots of questions. Someone back here?
I guess it's such a model, and we use the same model for e-books liquidation. Just means if that was given to us, where we didn't have fines and fees associated with open ed checkout. And I think that's basically the model that we should do with different people, right? And I look at that model, and people feel so much, you know, even if they have the technology, if they're not part of the digital side, but that's the model we're really going for in the physical world.
Yeah.
Plus unlimited reading.
Exactly. So that the comment, and I had a little trouble hearing, so correct me if I didn't get everything right, but was that the, you know, renewal process and being able to renew without fines is a model that exists for ebooks already, and now we're transitioning that to the physical collections, which is absolutely right. Yes.
You spoke a little bit about addressing concerns from staff. I'm wondering if the other two libraries, if you had similar kinds of concerns raised by staff for your respective programs and how you address those.
My staff are thrilled because they don't have, well, you know, and this is the biggest issue. It was not just patron driven is the decision, but you think about what's the worst aspect of your job working in libraries, right? Is to tell somebody that they have a fine and then they're super pissed off at you, right? And it's a very uncomfortable, you know, it's an uncomfortable conversation that automatically creates a negative interaction between you and that patron. And so that was another part of, you know, us wanting to do this was we want to decrease those barriers, but we also want to make staff actually, like Genesis said, be the good guy, right? And not have to have that negative conversation. And for, you know, I mean, geez, to be able to get out from behind the desk and actually interact with patrons in a positive way and help them use the library and show them the new great things that we're about instead of stuck behind a desk just collecting money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say at Redwood City Public Library, the staff were enthusiastic from the beginning. In fact, my circ manager asks me every couple of weeks, when are we going to get rid of adult fines? When are we going to get rid of adult fines? Like, how are we going to? He's really excited about that.
Yeah.
I know, Brad, did you have a different experience in Burlingame, or was the staff excited there as well?
Staff were great. It was actually one of the only pushback that we ever had was regular patrons who thought that paying fines was part of the process.
Yeah.
They were proud that they
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we
that's-
did.
And those patrons, you can always say, you're welcome to make a donation.
Exactly.
Right. No,
We-
we did have some pushback from some of the advisory boards and things about the and a little bit of customer comment after the fact, although not huge, about the whole, but this is how we teach kids responsibility. Isn't it important
Jesus
for us
Christ,
to
yes.
teach
Yes.
responsibility? And it's like, yeah, in the priority of lessons to teach kids,
Yeah.
you know, that's in there somewhere, but teaching them that they're welcome at the library and they should be able to read whatever they want
Yes.
is way, way higher than
Preach.
teaching them
Preach.
responsibility.
Yeah, the most vocal objection that I got was from a retired staff member, and it was basically that objection that we're teaching people that they can be irresponsible. And my take on that is that we are offering a convenience and a service for people who are busy and who are dealing with things that, like an onslaught of information coming at them that they didn't have to deal with years ago. And we're just helping them manage that better. The people who have been most vocal about loving this service are parents with kids, because they're just swamped with so many things, and it's like, this just makes their life so much easier. But I wholeheartedly agree with Derek. It's not our job to teach people responsibility. And honestly, if someone's not learning responsibility, paying library fines is not what's going to teach them. Like,
And
it's not.
we do still charge lost fees. So
Yeah. Right.
ultimately, there's
So there has to be
responsibility
some
if it doesn't come
responsibility
back.
in there. Yeah.
Did you go back and blow away existing fines on accounts?
The question was, did we go back and get rid of existing fines on accounts? And yes, we did.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yes.
I unfortunately will not be able to do that.
Yeah,
So.
we did not. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna add quickly. We have also had we have numerous ways that we kind of are already progressive about fines. We do a food for fines every November and December. Not every city participates in that, but most do in our cooperative, and so that's an opportunity for people to get rid of daily overdue fines. We've also had a practice the last few years of when kids sign up for the summer learning challenge, they get their fines waived at the time that they sign up. So we've had kind of a culture of finding ways to do that before we had an official policy.
I'm just going to say it's almost time for the keynote speaker. We're going to wind up. I'm going to take 2 more questions, but feel free to leave if you need to, and then we'll be available outside and the rest of the conference if you want to ask any of us questions. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, quick.
Really quickly, how many of you have already gone fine free? Nobody?
Yeah.
I'm behind you.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5. How many are seriously thinking about it? I am now.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
That's why I went.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, Jeanette Contreras her library just went fine free, so talk with her too about their
Yes.
experience. Okay, I'm sorry, I pointed to you, and did you have another question? Okay. Okay.
Hey, I just want to know if any of your finance or powers that be tried to convince you that this reduction should also be staff reduction.
So actually, my deputy chief operating officer made that case that it was, and I immediately said, "Oh hell no!" My intention is to reallocate that staff and to be able to actually use them in the library to help patrons and do more programming and do more services. So yeah.
That's why I started with my city manager. I wanted his buy-in because I knew he would give me coverage with finance. And then, yeah, I have a list as long as my arm of things I want staff to be able to do if we free them up from other stuff. So we always have the plan B.
Thank you, everybody.